Right, so the government says it can't possibly tax billionaires. That's too complicated, too risky. They might leave. Far too upsetting for the people who actually matter. But it can take jewellery off an asylum seeker without breaking a sweat in exchange for letting them stay. But they are then in for a 20-year wait if they want to stay for good, offering up whatever baubles they managed to save from wherever they came from whatever they fled, for no security at all. And they say that with a straight face, as if the public can't see the difference between a family fleeing war with the last valuables they own and someone sitting on 8-figure assets that have doubled over the last decade. Well, luckily, mainstream media's so-called journalists are falling over themselves in support of the Labour Party cause. They call it contribution, they call it fairness, they call it responsibility. What it really is a government testing how much cruelty, how much evil in fact it can get away with at the bottom of society, whilst reassuring the people at the top that nothing will ever be asked of them. And if you think that logic stops with refugees, you haven't been paying attention. Ordinary working class people have far more in common with those refugees than billionaires. And this is who Labour really serve. And if they thought they could get away with it with us, they would. So it's time we stop cheering this nonsense and saw it for what it is. Class war, by the party supposedly set up for us, that no longer fits that remit. Right, so the government has reached the point where it's prepared to take jewellery and other valuables off people seeking asylum in the United Kingdom. But when you look at that alongside its refusal to take anything meaningful from the billionaire class, a wealth tax, well, the whole thing stops being an immigration story, doesn't it? It starts revealing something much clearer about how power operates now. Because when a government draws a line like that, it isn't fumbling, it's not confused, it's announcing its loyalties. It's setting out who the state exists to protect now and who the state exists to extract from. And when you have a policy designed to take possessions from traumatised families at the very same time that the wealthiest people in the country are held harmless and untouched, well, the story becomes unavoidable even if every newspaper in the country tries to steer your eyes, frankly, anywhere else. So let's say plainly exactly what is happening then. The Home Office has confirmed that asylum seekers could have jewellery or valuables removed from them to help fund their stay in this country. The language is steeped in bureaucracy, the framing kept deliberately dry, the logic presented as nothing more than cost recovery. But jewellery is not just an asset on a balance sheet. It's often the last thing someone has after their home has been bombed, after their bank accounts have been frozen, after their family has been split up, after their life has been shredded. It's heirloom, it's portability, the tiny piece of security that could help them rebuild their life if they were ever given the chance. And the government wants to take it because it can. And that's the whole point. It's the easiest target going. It cannot complain, it cannot fight back, it cannot marshal lawyers or donors or newspaper editors. It's extraction from the powerless, because that's the path of least resistance, the path of the coward. And once you see that, you can see the rest of the structure that's moving around it. Compare that with what happens when anyone proposes a wealth tax now. The public supports it. People with wealth support it. The Green Party are the ones who champion it. Most basic economic modelling actually supports it in some form or other. The only group that does not support it is the group the government is trying to reassure. And this is not speculation. The polling is there in black and white. A clear majority of people surveyed are in favour of a modest tax on fortunes above the £10 million mark. Millionaires polled in the United Kingdom have said they would accept a 2% tax on extreme wealth if it helped fund public services. Every direction you look, the consent is there, but Labour, which likes to talk about fairness and responsibility when it suits, is unwilling to take even a penny in net worth tax from billionaires, because the ones that fund them are the ones who don't want anything of the sort, and that is, therefore, who they actually serve. It has said no, and this is where you can see the real priorities now. Because when the public says yes, and some of the wealthy say yes, and the economists say yes, and the only people saying no are the political class and the people who fund them, you can stop pretending that the decision is about growth or stability or responsibility. It's about protecting a class of people whose wealth has grown for 15 years straight, while almost everyone else has been chewed through by stagnant wages, soaring costs, privatised essentials, and political choices built around shielding capital. If you want to understand the cruelty of the asylum policy, you have to put it in the same frame as the refusal of a wealth tax. When the government says it is going to make asylum seekers contribute towards their accommodation by taking jewellery, and in the very same breath says the richest people in the country will not be asked to contribute anything extra at all, well, the message is unmistakable. The government protects the powerful, the government punishes the powerless, and asylum seekers are merely the people suffering the brunt of that logic today. The government is not doing this because it believes the jewellery will meaningfully offset costs, because it obviously won't. It's not doing this because it needs the money, because that is always there. They always find it for war, after all. The very thing that creates asylum seekers as that is. It's doing this because cruelty towards people with no political leverage is politically convenient, and cruelty towards people with wealth is not. And the pliant-client media dutifully echoes that line to reinforce it. That is the calculation, and the calculation always runs in the same direction. Now add in the 20-year rule, because the government is not just taking possessions from asylum seekers here, it's doing it while announcing that they will be barred from applying for permanent settlement for 2 decades. That goes far beyond Denmark's 8-year rule, the supposed system that has inspired this farce. It goes beyond anything proposed in recent British history. 20 years is not integration. 20 years is not security. 20 years in limbo. And when you combine limbo with asset seizure, you have a policy that removes the last remaining survival tool from people while telling them they will not have a stable future in this country for most of their adult lives. Tell me that's not theft. That alone exposes the lie at the centre of the policy. If the government genuinely wanted people to contribute, it would allow them to work. If the government genuinely wanted people to rebuild their lives, it would give them security. But the point is not contribution or rebuilding. The point is control. The point is deterrence. The point is to show toughness by harming the people least able to resist, so they might choose to go elsewhere. When asylum cases only account for 4% of migration figures, so the impact of this country, as far as migration will be concerned, is negligible. But the headlines will be full of toughness on small boats, and no doubt Reform UK's polling will grow again as a result. It is their policy, after all, and everyone knows it. This is where the working class point comes in, though, because this is not just about asylum seekers. The government is treating these people the way it would treat the rest of us if it thought it could get away with it. If the principle is that the state can seize assets from people who cost it money, then that principle can be applied anywhere, can't it? Today it is asylum seekers, tomorrow it could be people in arrears, people on benefits, people with council tax debt, people who have fallen through the gaps. Precedent is the real danger. Once you normalise extraction from the vulnerable, extraction becomes a legitimate method of governance, and you know exactly who will end up on the receiving end of that logic, because it will not be the wealthy. It will not be the donors. It will not be the landlords. It will not be the investors. It will be the people living paycheck to paycheck, the people who already feel the weight of every government decision, the people who cannot marshal the same institutional power as the wealthy classes labour in our courts. That is why working class people have more in common with asylum seekers than with billionaires, not because their circumstances are the same, but because their vulnerability to the state's decisions is. If the government can take from those who have nothing, it can take from those who have little as well. The difference is only scale. The logic is the same, and when the government steps forward with a policy that strips assets from one group while shielding another, it is stating clearly which side ordinary people sit on in the eyes of power. So much for Labour being the party of the working class. It is nothing of the sort, and if you still can't see that, well, that's where the next bit of this comes in. Because now you need to look at how the media fits into this, because you can see the choreography if you stand back far enough. While this asylum proposal is being rolled out, the press is filled with praise for Shabana Mahmood, the minister fronting it, a child of migrants herself, and a tweet from musician Tanita Tikaram caught my eye this morning. I thought this summed up the optics like a punch in the teeth, frankly, because she tweeted out that as soon as a UK government of any party appoints a brown female politician as Home Secretary, my heart sinks, because I know to reach there, she must show a willingness to cheerlead the most racist, cruel, inhumane policies that no senior white male MP would dare to announce. Certainly if you look at the track record that Mahmood now joins, following on from the likes of Suella Braverman and Preeti Patel, Tikaram has certainly got a point here, hasn't she? But the media is still framing Mahmood instead as competent and tough and serious and grown up. The coverage is curated to make her look like the adult in the room. Meanwhile, the only party that has consistently challenged the policy on humanitarian grounds, the Green Party, is being hammered over a letter about unsuitable accommodation on military bases, twisted into a narrative of hypocrisy, which has again been thrust into prominence on social media after Mahmood attacked the Greens in response to a question from Green MP Carla Denyer on this very issue of asylum. It's a completely bogus smear because the issue raised was about the suitability of military bases to be used to house asylum seekers, having already known that to have failed in regard when it was tried before. The Tories tried it, didn't they? It's not about refugees or proximity, but the smear circulates because it's useful. It helps the government. It makes sure the Greens are pushed outside of those boundaries of respectability, because the establishment is terrified of them. It turns a serious critique of policy failure into an accusation of virtue signalling, and it provides cover for Labour to behave like this while maintaining the illusion of having the moral high ground, which they absolutely don't. But this is what happens when the establishment closes ranks. You will elevate the minister, you neutralise the opposition, you distract from the cruelty, and you make sure the public debate focuses on personality rather than policy. It's not coordinated, it's structural. It's what happens automatically when a political system is built to protect wealth and punish vulnerability. Everyone involved knows their role without needing to be told it. What could have been done instead then, Damo? This is what a lot of people always ask. Almost anything, frankly, couldn't it? The alternative to taking jewellery from asylum seekers is to process asylum claims quickly, integrate people into local communities, treat them as human beings rather than walking costs. The alternative to 20 years in limbo is to give people a chance to rebuild their lives in a reasonable time frame. The alternative to military bases is to fund councils properly, use empty housing stock, and treat people as neighbours. This is the very multiculturalism the country has been built on for decades, hated only by those who find alternative skin tone distasteful. The alternative to wealth protection is to tax the top slice of extreme wealth that has grown untaxed for more than a decade. The alternative to targeting the vulnerable is to confront the actual sources of fiscal pressure in this country: corporate rent-seeking, privatised utility monopolies, wealth concentration, property speculation, and the refusal of successive governments to touch any of it. Everything the government is doing here is a deliberate choice. None of this is inevitable, none of it is necessary, none of it is forced by economic necessity. None of this is demanded by the public according to the polling, because a lot of us have empathy and sympathy and are inclusive and not exclusive. When you have the polling showing overwhelming support for taxing the wealthy, and when many of the wealthy themselves say they would support a modest tax, the patriotic millionaires group as a for instance, and when the government still says no, well, you can stop pretending this is a pragmatic decision. It's ideological. And it is a very old ideology. It says the rich must be protected because they are essential. It says the poor must be disciplined because they are burdensome. It's straight out of the Victorian era. It says the people in the middle must be distracted or misdirected and encouraged to punch down rather than ask why their own lives have become harder while wealth has piled up elsewhere. And this is where the verdict lies. A government that will take jewellery from people with nothing and refuses to take a penny from billionaires is not a government for working people. It's not a government for fairness. It's not a government for decency. It's a government for the wealthy, using the most vulnerable people in the country as props to send a message about toughness. It's a government that thinks cruelty is competence. It's a government that knows it can get away with harming the people least able to resist and knows it must never harm the people most able to push back on them. And if they're willing to do this now, at the start of their administration, still only a year and a bit into this government as we are, with the press cheering them on, and the opposition smeared for daring to object to it, then you have to ask yourself what they will do when the next crisis hits. Because if the state has already decided that it is acceptable to take from those who arrive with nothing, then the next logical step is to take from those who are struggling. That budget's coming up, isn't it? I wonder what it will contain. More harm for us? Undoubtedly. And I'll have proven my point, won't I? That's the trajectory, though, isn't it? You start with the weak, you test the boundaries, and if there's no resistance, you move the next rung up the ladder. So when you look at this policy, do not see immigration, see hierarchy, see extraction, see a government sending a message to the wealthy that their assets are safe, and sending a message to the vulnerable that theirs are not. See a government that will not tax wealth, but will confiscate necklaces. What if more is still to come? Will they go after the gold fillings in these people's heads next? See a government that believes taking from the desperate is easier than asking anything from the comfortable, and see the truth that lies at the centre of it all. If they can treat asylum seekers like this, they can treat any of us like this. And they will, if we let them, because we have to recognise this as a class war. And I know whose side of it I'm on. For more on the reality of that Green Party case as presented by Green Deputy Leader Rachel Millward, for which she and the party are being dishonestly and incessantly smeared over right now, check out the facts of the matter here. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the same time, which is very much appreciated. Holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next one. Cheers, folks.